In the beginning, the dungeon master created a cave, and he looked upon that cave, and it was good. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Black Magic Craft. This massive cave tile project that I've been working on for a couple weeks is totally finished and complete, and it turned out really awesome. I honestly don't think I could be happier with the way it turned out for the size of the project and the amount of effort that I put into it. I kept things fairly simple, but I think I achieved some tiles that are really unique looking, really interesting, and just not your typical boring two-tone gray cave tiles. These are really unique to the point where I now want to build a whole bunch of accessories in the same painting style so that they match. Yeah, it really was not that difficult to do, and it actually didn't take that much time. It took a lot of calendar time, but that's just because I didn't have a lot of free evenings to work on it. But actual time working on it, not too bad. So this is going to be the final wrap-up episode for these tiles, and I am going to cover the painting method that I used on them and the wash and all that sort of stuff. So if you are at the point where you have your stuff carved up and ready to go, now you can try out what I think is a pretty unique painting style. I've kind of done all of the techniques in some form in other projects, but now I'm kind of mixing all the stuff I've learned over the last few projects and putting them to use here. So let's take a look at how I completed this set, and then make sure you stick around to the end where I'm going to reflect on a few different things that I learned and go over some different options that you may want to consider when you are building your set. Okay guys, let's do it. For this paint job, I wanted to make these stone tiles look as realistic as possible. I kind of didn't want to make it look like a dirt floor. I wanted it to look like a granite or marble, like a real solid stone with a lot of variance in it. But I also wanted to keep it simple. So this is the procedure that I did for my set. The kind of instinctual thing to do when painting any kind of stone tiles is just to do the basic two-tone gray out of the bottle like I do with my basic dungeon tiles. But I wanted to avoid that, and I wanted a little bit more of a natural look. And in nature, rock is rarely this kind of basic generic gray tone. Usually the grays you find in rock have an undertone of browns or yellows or greens or blues. This kind of gray craft paint out of the bottle is kind of a bluey undertone, a little bit of yellow, but it reads as very generic gray, like black and white mixed together. So to get a more kind of subtle undertone, I did a similar approach to what I did with my jungle tiles, and I used this suede by Craftsmart to base coat all my tiles. It is a very light beige, kind of yellowy tan, and because I was doing like 100 tiles, I did the same approach as I did with the Mod Podge coating. I applied tan suede base coat to all the tiles with a paint roller, a little mini paint roller. It took 2 coats to do because this color is so light on top of the black. And you could actually, in retrospect, on these tiles, avoid even using black in your Mod Podge. You could mix in a bit of suede if you want to do a small batch, or white, or just use it straight out of the container, clear, because you're really not leaving yourself any black on these pieces as you're doing it. So the black's not really necessary. It's just I already have that on hand all the time. So 2 coats with the roller, and the nice thing is that on the Mod Podge and this coat, using the roller actually adds an even additional little bit of texture to the stone. Paint those all up, let them dry. Didn't take that long, under an hour to do 2 coats on like 100 tiles. Now we are gonna try to get this looking something like this with some undertones. And the way I'm gonna do that is by using some burnt sienna, or any kind of orangey, reddy brown that you have. and I'm going to use this golden brown here, which is a kind of lighter tan brown with a little bit of red in it. And I'm going to kind of take inspiration from DM Scotty here and do a bit of sponge painting. Now, I'm normally not a fan of sponge painting on terrain. I prefer to use a brush to hit all the actual bumps and ridges that are in the stone so that the color is, you know, kind of related to and impacted by the shape of the stonework, where sponge is kind of just does its own thing. But on 100 tiles, you have to make things a bit simpler. And also I'm really looking to create kind of veining in these stones, so the sponge painting works really well. So first I start with this brighter red kind of burnt sienna, and I just went around and quickly hit some spots, creating some kind of streaks and dark spots. Hit the edges a little bit. I'm only doing the edges that are textured and not the smooth faced edges. That's just a waste of time because in a setup you never actually see that. And that's about all I'm going to put on a stone. When I did the full set, you know, everything was laid out on these pieces of cardboard, and I just went and did everything in the red first, and then I'm going to come in with this kind of golden brown, kind of like a chestnut color. Use the same sponge so you get a bit of natural mixing, and I'm going to repeat the process, doing maybe a little bit less of this one than the first one. You just need to let that dry up a bit, and then you can move on to doing some dry brushing with vanilla or off-white. This is going to serve two purposes. One is that it's going to pull out some of the details in the texture, but it's also going to mask and tone down a lot of these brownish red streaks that we have going, because it's going to put them in between the two layers of tan and white and make them look more like they're part of the stone. And again, keep in mind that the wash is really going to darken these up, so you can be a little bit excessive with this and not as concerned with actually being subtle. You want to get a nice coverage here with your dry brushing. Now you're left with something that looks like that. Now here is the thing that really makes this project complete. It's the wash. I'm not going to mix up a batch because I already have this stuff made from when I did my whole set, and it's very difficult to duplicate a wash exactly when you're trying to do it again. So I want to use the same wash on this piece. But essentially, this is just the black wash that I made in a previous episode. I'll put the link in the description. But much like my rock formation one, I added a little bit. I added some basic brown to it, into a tub this big, you know, a very healthy squirting. And then to give that nice kind of metallic-y shimmer to the stone, I mixed in some of this folk art metallic, this is called chocolate brown. It's basically like a copper, and a little bit of this bronze. And all the little metallic pigments in there will settle on the piece, and in certain light, the little shimmeries will be reflected off the stone and just add a little bit more to the texture and realism. So because this has been sitting since the other day when I did my full set, I'm gonna mix it up really well. And you probably can't see it on the screen, but all those nice little shimmery metallic bits are swirling around in here. And I'm gonna do the dip method same as I have on other tiles. Although this batch is getting fairly low. When I started, it was about halfway full, so I could completely submerge my tiles in, but 100 tiles used up quite a bit of wash. So I'm gonna take my tile and I'm gonna dip it in. Make sure I get all edges if it's too shallow. And then I'm gonna remove it from the wash, and I'm gonna place all the tiles on a piece of cardboard, and I'm going to leave them to dry. The nice thing is that if you're doing a big batch, you're gonna have all these sheets of cardboard, and as the wash pours off, it's basically gonna stick all these tiles to the cardboard, and you can use that to your advantage in the next step, because moving forward, you're going to want to spray coat all of your pieces with the Minwax fast drying spray. They're light, so when you kind of spray, they might want to move around. You can use the fact that all these tiles are going to dry stuck to the cardboard to your advantage, because then you can just take the sheets and they will be bonded, and you can actually take them outside or to your basement, to your spray booth, wherever you're doing it, spray all the pieces, and they're nicely attached to the cardboard. And then once that clear coat is dry, then you can pop all the pieces off. They're not stuck that well, they're just stuck enough that when you're transporting and spraying, they will stay in one place. But you're gonna wanna wait at least overnight for the wash to completely dry before spraying with the clear coat. Now, one last important tip for you guys is when you are done doing the wash on all of your tiles, the remaining wash that you have left over, I highly recommend you find yourself a container and you put the remainder of the wash in it and you mark it with what project it was used for. Here I'm writing new cave tiles, because eventually, maybe really soon, you are going to want to make some additions to your set. Maybe you just want to make more of the base tiles. Maybe you want to make some feature tiles like I plan to in the future. Maybe you want to make some rock formations that match. Whatever, you're going to want to be able to replicate the paint as close as possible. And replicating this portion of the paint job is fairly simple, but the wash is, like I said, difficult. So if you keep the remainder, you stand a far better chance of having your future builds matching the old ones. So take this, mark it, put it aside for later. You will thank yourself. Trust me. All right, so that is all it takes to complete this set. Like I said, the whole thing, start to finish, took me a while in terms of calendar time, but that's because I wasn't working on it very often. It actually, in total, if you were to sit down on a Saturday morning and start building a set like this, and you did it exactly like I did and you worked at the same pace I did, I think you could complete it in about 6 hours. I'm not joking. The actual working time on this is probably only about 6 hours. It took about an hour to carve all the tiles on the hot wire table, took about another hour to texture them all, about an hour to do the black Mod Podge coat, about an hour to do that tan coat, and then like another 30 minutes for the rest of the painting and 30 minutes for the wash. So that's putting you at 5, what did I say? 5, 6 hours, whatever, I lost track. You could do that all in sequence, 5 or 6 hours, get your wash on, let it dry overnight, and then the next day spend 15 minutes giving it the clear coat of polyurethane, and you are done. So don't let how long it took me to make these videos and this series deter you from jumping into a project like this, because if you can actually just dedicate one solid day of work to a project like this, you can get it done if you use some streamlined methods like I've shown. One thing I want to present as an option for you, this was suggested by a user in the comments of, I think, part 1, and I thought it was a really good idea. I have all of these little pieces that I'm using to kind of represent partial walls where I want the tiles to get a little bit tighter and narrower. And I painted them up like stone. And the nice thing is that you can stack them and use tiles to create different elevations and plateaus. But when they just line the edge, you might personally, or your players might find that they look like they're representing an elevation when actually what you want to represent is the walls pushing in. So one thing you can do is you can paint the backside of all of these pieces black and actually put them on the table upside down, so it continues the negative space of your game table, especially if you're using a black game table like I am. That's how you can separate pieces representing elevation or walls, you know, imposing into the room. You have both options then. And I think that's a really good idea. I don't know how much I'll actually use it because I like the look of seeing the top surface painted, but definitely something to consider. I would even paint a handful of corner tiles and field tiles and stuff black on the other side, so that if you wanted to do a big room with a big void in the center, like say like a donut shaped room, you could use the black sided tiles to do that. And now the elephant in the room, the thing that inevitably always comes up when I'm doing cave tiles or outdoor stuff, and that's where's the grid? Well, there is no grid on these tiles, and I have some pretty strong feelings about that, and there's actually a lot to discuss on that issue, and I think that is a video in and of itself. So next episode, I'm going to talk in detail about how I feel about using or not using a grid, when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate, why I didn't use it here, why I use it on other things, and all of that. That's what we're going to talk about next week. Hold your comments on the grid. It is going to get covered in more detail. But that's it for this week. I hope that you enjoyed, coming along with me on this wild ride of building this big set. If you found this video and my other videos useful, please, hit that like button. Drop me a comment. Go post something on the Black Magic Craft Facebook page. I love seeing your guys' work. Of course, if you want to pick up any of the tools and supplies that I use, go over to blackmagiccraft.ca. You can purchase them through my Amazon affiliate store. That way you know you're getting the right stuff. And more importantly, those purchases actually give me a commission that is the main funder of this channel. At this point now, you guys using that store is the biggest financial contributor to Black Magic Craft, and I really thank you for it. It's great because you don't have to spend any extra money to support me. And in case you don't know this, you don't actually just have to buy the stuff that I'm posting. If you go to my store, click on the Amazon link, buy yourself an Xbox One or a TV or fuzzy slippers or bubble bath, I'll get a cut of that too. And it's a great way that you can help out the channel. Just go do your regular ass Amazon shopping that you're gonna do anyway, but through one of my links, and it's like a free donation. Also, if you really want to join the core Black Magic Craft community and want to really directly help out the channel, consider supporting me on Patreon. That little community and those rewards is how we got to building this set. I only built this set because one of my big supporters asked me to revisit the idea of mines. And I'm gonna continue that in future videos and start working on some rails and all that sort of stuff. Until next week, guys, happy crafting.